Hey guys, thanks so much for checking out my show. Really appreciate it. Appreciate all the support. Please click to subscribe. Really helps me grow the channel. I'm outside Nancy Guthrie's house, of course. It's now day 20. It's Friday. I know I got my days mixed up yesterday, but I think just a little sleep deprivation. I want to get into a couple of things in this episode. An interesting statement from the sheriff's office today about the possibility of more than one suspect, which I'm going to get into. There's more that I want to talk about with the possible Mexico connection. I also just want to show you guys, like, outside of Nancy's house, there are so many more flowers and just sort of like things that have shown up really over just the last couple of days. A lot of the neighbors have been turning out. This one says, Nancy, may this light guide you home, and there's a little light right there. Nancy, please come home. Bring Nancy home. Nobody is holding your mother hostage. And just like, look at all these flowers. Dear Guthrie family, your neighbors stand with you. There's so many out here. We pray for you, Savannah and family. Prayers for Nancy Guthrie. Let Nancy come home. It's interesting, the neighbors, in the beginning it seemed like were kind of, not standoffish, but I think they just were trying to be respectful to the family, and now they seem to be coming out more, talking more, bringing more flowers. This is kind of interesting. I saw this earlier. This says, an open letter to the kidnappers. Feel free to read and return it to this envelope. One of my producers said this was over here, and I actually haven't read it yet, so I don't know what it's going to say. A reminder from a fellow sinner. The depictions in these pictures is happening whether you know it or not. It is also happening whether you like it or not. Do not be the reason Our Lady of Guadalupe weeps. Yes, you are in my rosaries. Our Lady of Guadalupe, pray for us. Kind of interesting. And then there's like some religious photos and interesting. So anyway, there's a lot more sort of showing up out here, almost like sort of a memorial now forming outside Nancy's house. So the latest on the investigation I'm going to get into, there was a little update from the sheriff's office, the possibility of more suspects, and that they specifically put that in the release I thought was interesting. And I've got a retired FBI agent who actually specialized in Mexico and worked in Mexico, and I'm really interested to get his take on a couple of things. So all that's coming up in this episode of Brian Ensign Investigates. Hey guys, all right, I want to give you guys the latest updates on the Nancy Guthrie investigation. We get these updates every day from the Pima County Sheriff's Office, and they kind of go through several different bullet points. I'm going to again get to my guest in a second, who's going to help me really dive into what they may not be telling us and what may be happening behind the scenes. And I can assure you, there are things happening behind the scenes, obviously, that we don't know about, because there are literally hundreds of law enforcement officers in Tucson right now. You see them around, and there's a lot of investigating happening. So I'll get to that in a second with my guests, but let me read you their official update for today, for Friday. They say detectives and agents continue to actively follow up on leads. Neighbors have submitted surveillance video from the area, and investigators are carefully reviewing the footage. That's interesting because you remember we saw the detectives at Nancy Guthrie's neighbor's house the other day looking at what appeared to be like a Ring camera floodlight outside, and we've seen them at other houses too. So apparently they are still getting surveillance footage from the area. DNA analysis is underway on biological evidence recovered during the investigation. This process can be lengthy. There is no additional information available at this time. So DNA analysis, we know that there was DNA found inside Nancy Guthrie's house. I've told you guys about this before. That didn't belong to Nancy Guthrie and didn't belong to anyone in her immediate circle. And why they say that could take time is because they're doing investigative genetic genealogy. And you guys have heard me talk about this before. I won't go in depth on it again, but it's what they use to basically crack the Brian Kohberger case. And it takes more time than just traditional DNA comparisons, because they go into genealogy databases and they try to find distant relatives of a suspect, a third, fourth cousin, and then they can work their way in that way. So that could take time. It took time in the Kohberger case. And just for a little bit of perspective, some people are saying like, oh my gosh, is the Nancy Guthrie case cold? Has it gone cold? It's day 20 right now when I'm making this video. You look at other cases like Kohberger, for example, Brian Kohberger, it was 47 days until Brian Kohberger was arrested. The murders were on November 13th. The arrest was on December 30th. So 47 days. And again, we're only on day 20 right now. Gabby Petito, her remains weren't found for 39 days. So while it feels like things aren't moving and 20 days is forever, sometimes these investigations take a lot of time. So just kind of some perspective there. Back to the update. With suspects, they say investigators continue seeking information to help identify the individual captured on doorbell surveillance video. As the sheriff has previously stated, while we are requesting information related to the person seen on video, and this is the part that I sort of zeroed in on, investigators are not ruling out the possibility that more than one person may be involved, which I thought it was interesting that they put that in their release today. I've heard the sheriff say that before. They're not ruling it out. But the fact they put that line in today, not ruling out the possibility that more than one person may be involved, it's a theory that I've heard a lot about. A lot of the law enforcement experts I've interviewed have said there's no way one person was able to pull this off by themselves. Of course, we see the suspect on the Ring camera at the front of the house, but is it possible there was someone behind the house? Is it possible there was a getaway driver parked a couple of blocks away? Could someone have really pulled this off alone? And again, most of the experts I've talked to say no, there's probably someone else involved, and it's just interesting that now the sheriff's office is putting that in black and white. Investigators are not ruling out the possibility that more than one person may be involved. In terms of calls coming in, they say our 911 communication center continues to receive hundreds of calls daily related to the case. We ask that only actionable tips be reported to investigators. Comments or opinions about the investigation should not be directed to 911. So basically, and I've heard this, I mean, they're getting like so many calls in their 911 center. And if you have an opinion about the case or just like a theory, you're kind of just bogging down their phone lines by calling. And so they are saying, please don't do that because they're already overwhelmed with calls right now. So that does make sense. People probably shouldn't be doing that, obviously. No press briefings scheduled right now. Sheriff will not be holding any mail and media availability going into the weekend. So it seems like we're not going to be getting a significant update unless something happens. And that, I mean, just from covering these kinds of stories, nothing any quite like this, but when I think back to even Coburg or other big ones, you never know when the big update's going to come. I mean, I didn't know. I got a little bit of a heads up when Brian Koberger was brought into custody, but we never know when that moment's going to come, which is why I'm still here and I'm waiting and kind of always on pins and needles. But barring anything from happening, the sheriff is saying there's not going to be any interviews or press briefings going into the weekend. I'm joined now by Eric Dickerson, a retired FBI agent. Eric, thank you for joining me. I really appreciate it. Thanks for being patient with me. I had to kind of run to get better service. The service outside Nancy's house is not very good. But I wanted to start out by asking you, it's been kind of a slow day with the investigation, at least with what they're telling the media. The most interesting thing, they put out a release a little while ago, the sheriff's office, saying, that they're open to the possibility of there being more than one suspect, which is something that I've thought about before. There's obviously the one person we see on the Ring camera in the front. But what are your thoughts on that? I mean, do you think there could be other people involved?
Well, Brian, in many ways, this doesn't meet your stereotypical kidnapping or hostage taking scenario. Um, and normally, in a normal kidnapping case or abduction case, we usually see more than one subject. There's usually at least one. The nature of a kidnapping or trying to take somebody against their will is difficult as is, but typically you need somebody to drive the car and you need some level of support to make that happen.
A lot of people have said, experts, that this was an amateur person based on what you see in the video. The gun doesn't fit the holster and trying to use the grass to cover the camera at first before pulling it. But I was thinking about it today. I mean, we're now on day 20. So even though they appear amateur, I mean, it seems like whoever did this or the people who did this, I mean, they sort of are, it seems like they're outsmarting law enforcement, at least for now.
Yeah, and it's clear that law enforcement is combing through every piece of evidence. They're looking at forensics, they're looking at digital evidence, they're doing a wide canvassing of witnesses or neighbors or acquaintances or even family members. And they will look at every part of this. I do agree with you in the sense that to abduct somebody and hold them for 20 days is not an easy feat. So, so I would be reluctant to call them amateur just by the brief visual that we have on them, on the individual at the door on the Ring camera. I would be really reluctant to say that they're amateur in that sense. Of course, his attire and the way he conducts himself isn't is abnormal, is different. But here we are in day 20 of this investigation, and they're still struggling for additional evidence or clues.
And I reported that they were going to gun stores in Tucson with a list of 40 names and 40 photos. And there's new reporting today that they're doing the same thing at some hotels. What does that tell you? I mean, on day 20, should that make us think that they haven't really narrowed it down to a couple of people?
Well, what I can tell simply by the nature of the case and what's been revealed to the public at least, that doubtful they have contact with the kidnappers or with the abductors. It would be very unusual to be so out front in the media and requesting public assistance when you have some level of connection with the perpetrators. So that tells me that they're still struggling for indicators and clues. You mentioned that they're going to gun stores. It would be common or it would be normal for them to visit gun stores, sporting outlets, anything that the brief video may have revealed as to clothing, accessories, holster, or any other clue that might direct them to some retail outlet that might sell that.
What about a vehicle? I mean, they still haven't given a vehicle description. There's not a lot of cameras in Nancy's neighborhood. It's really dark at night. But I just think back to some other cases that I've covered, and it seems like once they get a vehicle, it all kind of comes together. How important, I mean, how important is that, do you think?
It's a critical piece of evidence. And what they're going to do is they're going to do some route analysis and look at possible points of ingress and egress from her house. And they're going to analyze every piece of video footage that they may be able to come across, either from private residences or from business establishments, or even traffic cameras or whatever's available.
What do you make of how close we are to Mexico here? Because you worked in Mexico, right, for the FBI?
Yeah, yeah. I led the cross-border violence team, and we dealt with hundreds of these cases related to that cross-border element. Um, the mere fact that we're close to the border, close enough to the border with this incident, would indicate to me that they should be looking at that collaboration just as a piece of normal investigative procedure. Is there a possibility that they could have driven across the border with the victim? Yes, that is a possibility. In 20 days, they could be clear across the country or in a different country altogether. So, as part of their investigation, I would assume that they are looking at that possibility.
I went yesterday. I drove to Nogales. It was just like a little over an hour from where Nancy lives. And I parked and walked in because someone was telling me like you can get in big trouble if you bring your rental car in Mexico. So I was like, let me just park. Walked in. There was no one stopped me. Like there, I went through the official little crossing area, but no one asked for my ID. I walked through a metal detector, but the lady didn't look like she was paying attention, really. It was just like you just walked in, basically. That was it. And I was watching the cars, and it looked like the same for most of the cars going into Mexico. Like maybe they were stopping every 5 or 10, but it wasn't like when you come back into the United States where it's like a real check. How is it really? Would it be that easy to kidnap someone and get them into Mexico? Because it seemed like it would be easy.
Well, it depends on a lot of factors. Depends on the time of day. It depends on whether or not this was an organized crime group that has either collaborated or corrupted officials to be able to transport or go unchecked, essentially. So there's a lot of factors that come into play. But to your point about crossing the border, even towards the U.S., yes, there's documents checks. Going south, not so much. But tens of millions of people cross that border every year along the 2,000 mile stretch of border. So so it is not impossible to cross with a victim of a kidnapping. It's happened many times before. But again, it depends on a lot of factors.
What is the collaboration like between the FBI and Mexican law enforcement since you were, right in the middle of that when you were working there?
Well, the Mexican officials have a tremendous amount of experience working abductions and kidnappings. My team alone, we worked hundreds of those cases with collaborating with Mexican officials. So they do have their own set of skills, their own set of tools, their own technology that they bring to bear to assist on these cases. Um, Again, what this boils down to is that critical piece of evidence, in my opinion, whether or not that's technical evidence, digital forensics, or perhaps that DNA analysis that they've been talking about, witness information, or as you said, identifying another co-conspirator on this or a vehicle. Any one of those could bring a tremendous amount of information and leads to this case.
Because it was interesting, we had FBI sources who confirmed that they've been in touch with Mexican law enforcement. And then Mexican law enforcement put out their own statement saying, we have no reason to believe that Nancy Guthrie is in Mexico. And the sheriff has also said that here, but he also said, we just don't know. Like he wasn't saying
Right.
they don't think she's there. It was just like, we don't know one way or the other. But he also said they have no evidence to say she's there, but they don't know. But I'm just wondering, like, based on when you worked with the Mexicans, is it like a PR thing? Like, are they just going to immediately say, "Oh, we don't think she's here," just because they don't want it, Mexico to look bad, like they're involved?
That's a good question, but I think they're speaking strictly to the facts, right? There is no concrete evidence that she has been taken to Mexico. So if you look at it from that optic, they don't have any credible information that she's in Mexico. That doesn't mean, however, that they're not collaborating with the FBI, looking at the possibility of whatever evidence that she may have ended up in Mexico. They just don't have any credible indications that that is effectively what took place.
But you're saying they're good at investigating kidnappings over there.
Yeah. So if in fact this kidnapping has connections with Mexico, they do have a network of human intelligence. They do have their own technical abilities, and they have investigative prowess. They've done a lot of these cases. So I would suspect that they will partner up with the FBI and look at this case from an international perspective.
Does it have any signs of being cartel related to you?
No, no, that doesn't mean it for some reason it can't be. But what I've seen for organized crime related abductions or kidnappings, this doesn't fit that mold. This is much more in, as you said earlier, in a sense, more amateur than what organized crime would bring. Um, Also, just the nature of where the kidnapping happened and how it happened is not doesn't doesn't signal me or doesn't indicate organized crime involvement.
Yeah, because I mean, organized crime cartel, like, what would their motive have been?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
taking an 84-year-old woman. I mean, it doesn't do they and would they have really wanted the attention to be connected to a case like this with a famous person? I mean, don't they kind of want to be more under the radar?
Yeah, you're exactly right. This does not fit the mold. But I'm glad you brought up one point, and that is motive. Aside from the physical and digital evidence, what I'm going to look at as an investigator is motive. That really is a key indicator on how this investigation will unfold. Key indicators, motives can be obviously financially related, where they're asking something in exchange, your typical ransom-based kidnapping. It could be ideology. It could be politically motivated. It could be retribution or retaliation. So I would be looking very carefully at at the motive factor, because that is really going to direct what tools you're going to use ultimately to investigate this case.
Are you surprised that it's been 20 days and, there's no arrest? Or is that just kind of an outsider perspective? Like, all they always say the CSI effect. People watch CSI,
Yeah,
you think the episode's going to end in an hour, I mean, with all your experience, so would you have thought this would have been solved sooner?
not necessarily. We've had protracted kidnaps that have gone on for 6 months or longer. And we've had kidnappings that have been resolved within hours. So there's a lot of factors that we don't know. I would say it's concerning to me the fact that it's already been 20 days and we haven't had either a credible ransom demand or proof of life. Those two factors, coupled with the fact that it's been 20 days, that raises concern.
Do you question whether it even is a kidnapping? I mean, do you think we have to keep that possibility open?
Yeah, so kidnapping has a couple of factors to it. An abduction is just taking somebody against their will, right? A kidnapping involves an element of quid pro quo or exchange or a demand. Uh, we don't have that. So that's why many people are calling this a disappearance or an abduction. Um, to really define it as a kidnapping, we have to have some contact with kidnappers that are demanding something in exchange for the victim.
Do you think there's more going on behind the scenes with the FBI in Mexico than they're letting on?
I would imagine so. On cases like this, there's certain elements that you're going to tell the public and that you're going to make public, and there are elements that you hold those cards very close to your chest. And there's several reasons for that. One is you don't want the perpetrators to know what you know. But two, if you do ever it results in an arrest or a rescue, or there's some singular information that's going to help you eventually prosecute that case. So there's multiple factors, but I have no doubt that there's information that the public doesn't know. That's normal protocol for these type of investigations.
And you mentioned a rescue. I had confirmed, and I don't know if they're still here, that the FBI's hostage rescue team was here at least at one point. I guess the FBI, they would be part of a rescue. I mean, I guess that would be the best outcome for this whole thing, some kind of rescue. It's just interesting the way you said rescue. I hadn't thought about it that way lately.
Yeah, so that is what they train for, 24 hours a day. That is what they live and breathe is hostage rescue. And they're very, very difficult and complex tactical operations to be able to rescue a victim or a hostage from one of these situations. And that's what they do. And I would have no doubt that if there were indicators such as maybe a place or a person that was involved, that the FBI's elite team would be involved in that aspect.
Have you been concerned at all about what you've seen with, the sheriff here? I mean, like there's been disagreement, it sounds like, between the sheriff and the FBI, and there's been some people wondering why the FBI doesn't just fully take over the case. What are your thoughts on that front?
So there's a couple of things that we have to keep in mind. First off, there's jurisdictional matters. Both the FBI has jurisdiction as well as the state prosecutors. Now, what gives the FBI jurisdiction? The FBI has jurisdiction whether they have knowledge of a victim crossing or a perpetrator crossing state lines. That gives federal jurisdiction. But what most people don't know is there's also this presumptive jurisdiction. After a victim has disappeared more than 24 hours, it's presumed that they've crossed state lines, and that gives also federal investigators jurisdiction. So it is critically important that that information is shared. I'm certain that they may have a type of task force or command operations centers set up to deal with all of the leads and compare all the leads with all the evidence that they've accumulated. I mean, that's a critical part of this case.
When you would work cases though where the FBI was assisting, or was with another agency or a local agency. I mean, is it better when the FBI just has full control? I mean, does it run more smoothly typically?
Well, it really depends. I mean that, the collaboration piece, there's this saying, right, that sometimes less is more. And you really want to have the element of control on where you're directing the investigation, so you're not tripping over each other, so you're not potentially contaminating evidence, or so you're not looking at things twice and really reducing the efficiency of the case. I would imagine that in this case, both are working in collaboration and 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 trying to bring resolution to the family. That's what I envision.
Is there anything else that stands out to you? I mean, everybody seems to think this is, I mean, it is. It's a really unique, strange case, right? I mean, is there anything else that stands out to you that you think is important?
Well, what I'm thinking about is, um, again, is the part that I'm concerned with really is that there's been no communication with kidnappers. There has been, it's already into the 20th day, and we have very little evidence that we've seen. Again, we don't see everything. Um, and I think that would raise some concern to investigators and some sense of urgency. So I would echo what the FBI and local officials say, that that what could break this case is cooperation from the public, whether they've seen or heard of anything that could help. Any small bit of evidence could help break this case.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised that someone didn't call yet recognizing the person. I mean, I know he was covered from head to toe, but I just thought someone would have recognized him by now or recognized the backpacker. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, and it's pretty brazen to walk into a residential neighborhood with a ski mask on and basically your gun exposed, and knock at someone's door, and then from what we can see, probably a struggle ensued. And then you have to figure out how to remove that victim against their will to a vehicle that's waiting. So I agree with you. I'm surprised as well that somebody hasn't come forward with having seen something out of place, something suspicious.
Well, I appreciate your time, Eric. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Appreciate Eric for taking the time to talk with me, and appreciate all of you guys for watching. Some people are asking me like, how long are you going to stay there? I mean, I'm not leaving anytime soon. That's just not the way I operate. When I get really into a story or a case, I just stay. And when everyone else leaves, I usually stay. So I don't have any plans to leave right now. Obviously at some point, I mean, if this really does go unsolved for a long time, I gotta go home at some point. But right now, I don't want to leave and then risk something happening and not being here. And I still think there's a lot of work to be done on the ground with reporting. And I find when like all the other reporters will start to leave, like that's sometimes when I get the most interesting stuff. So I don't plan on going anywhere, but I'll keep you guys posted. I'll probably do some episodes on the weekend, see what I can dig up. And I really appreciate you guys for following my channel. I can't say it enough. It's just, means so much to me. And that's it. So I'll talk to you guys later.